Good afternoon, class. We would like to look at inborn errors of metabolism. We want to understand why some infants or babies born tend to have some metabolic deficiencies or metabolic abnormalities. Some babies or infants or some people, when they take in our normal milk, they tend to run, they tend to have diarrhea, vomiting, and the rest. Some babies don't take in milk. They only take in diet that does not have milk. Some don't take in breast milk. If they take in breast milk, they will end up having diarrhea. What causes some of these abnormalities? Some can be an enzyme deficiency or a mutation in a gene which can be inherited from both parents, the mother and the father. And most of these genes associated with inborn errors of metabolism are recessive genes. A copy inherited from the mother, and a copy inherited from the father. So they are homozygous recessive. Let's watch this video before we zero in on our main lecture. As part of the objectives of the lecture, students are expected to define IEM, that's inborn errors of metabolism, outline the concepts of inborn error of metabolism, state the examples of IEM and their symptoms, describe the cause of each, that is, the enzymes involved and the outcome, state the diagnostic techniques that are commonly used, list and outline some examples of managing such conditions. Inborn errors of metabolism is a genetically determined biochemical disorder in which a specific enzyme defect, or when an enzyme is lacking, causes a metabolic block that may have pathologic or disease-causing consequences at birth or in later life. Inborn errors of metabolism comprise a large class of genetic diseases involving disorders of metabolism. The majority are due to defects of single genes that code for enzymes, and these enzymes facilitate conversion of various substances into other products. Example, we have a substrate here and a product here. If there is a defective enzyme, or this enzyme catalyzing this reaction, conversion of this substrate to this product is inhibited, then there will be buildup of this substrate. And the buildup of this substrate or its intermediate can lead to toxic effects in the body. Inborn errors of metabolism are now often referred to as congenital metabolic diseases, and it's also the same as inherited metabolic disease. When you say anything is congenital or any disease is congenital, it means it's inherited from the mother and the father. It is also called vertical inheritance. Disorders of carbohydrate metabolism are glycogen storage disease, also called McArdle disease. Disorders of amino acid metabolism, that is, example is phenylketonuria. Disorders of organic acid metabolism again, that is alkaptonuria. Disorders of fatty acid oxidation or beta oxidation and mitochondrial metabolism. Example is medium chain acyl coenzyme A dehydrogenase deficiency, often shortened to MCADD. Disorders of purine or pyrimidine metabolism. I guess by now you know what a purine is, what a pyrimidine is. A purine, examples of purines are adenine is an example of purine. Then it seems, is it guanine also? Then cytosine, uracil, and cytosine, uracil, and is it thymine are pyrimidines. Okay, so disorders of purine or pyrimidine breakdown leads to what we call Lesch-Nyhan syndrome or uric acid buildup. You know, purine and pyrimidine are nitrogenous bases. So when you break nitrogen, something that contains nitrogen, break down proteins, you get uric acid buildup, and that is what we call gout. Disorders of steroid metabolism. Example is congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Whenever we say hyperplasia means excessive abnormal build-up of what? Or multiplication of cells. So if a woman is pregnant, you see that the womb becomes very big. The womb becoming big, it's what? Means that cells are multiplying. Hmm? So hyperplasia, the cells are multiplying. So we have hyperplasia, excessive multiplication of cells or division of cells. Eh? So hyperplasia, hyperplasia. That is especially also the endometrium. When a woman, the females, those who are menstruating, their womb comprises of endometrium, myometrium, and serosa or perimetrium. Serosa. These are the layers of the womb or perimetrium. Perimetrium. So this is the part of the womb that contains the functional layer. This is where the cells multiply under the influence of estrogen and progesterone. So when to wait for fertilization of the ovum to form a zygote. So when the zygote comes to implant in the womb, then the endometrium is nourished with glycogen and glandular cells, and red blood cells and blood supply to cater for the new developing fetus. So when this uterus is developed, the cells become hyperplastic, or cells multiply to wait for fertilization or implantation of the fetus. But if fertilization does not take place, then the endometrium will shed its content, and that is what we see in menstruation. That the red blood cells and the rest, other tissues that will support the baby, the glands, the glycogen, they will be shed, and that is what we see as menstruation. So the cells became hyperplastic, excessive multiplication of cells. So this one will multiply to about 1,000, 1,500, and that is hyperplasia. So disorders of mitochondrial function is also called Kearns-Sayre syndrome or neuromuscular disorders. Abnormalities in DNA of mitochondria. These are all inherited genetic defects or inborn errors of metabolism. How does IEMs manifest? Or how do IEMs manifest? Because of the enormous number of these diseases and wide range of systems affected, nearly every presenting complaint to a doctor may have a congenital metabolic disease as a possible cause. Congenital means what? Like I said, inherited, especially in childhood. The following are examples of potential manifestations affecting each of the major organs. Many manifestations may develop. Many forms of cancer are inherited from parents. Recurrent vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, excessive urination, renal failure, dehydration, edema, hypotension. You see, there are some of the times that you realize that you alone, when you take milk, then you begin to go to toilet. You have excessive diarrhea unless you take in antibiotics before it will go. It is an inborn error of metabolism. You inherited it from your parents. We call it hypolactasia. We will get there. That's lactose intolerance. There are some people also when they come into contact with some foods, they get reaction. Some of these are all inborn errors of metabolism. So let's continue. If we say hypotension is low blood pressure. Then heart failure, enlarged heart. Enlarged heart is also called cardiomegaly. Enlarged heart is called cardio. Whenever you hear cardio, it means what? Heart. And megaly is what? Enlargement. So any organ, so if you say hepatomegaly, whenever you hear hepato, is the liver. Hepato or hepatic is the liver. So hepatomegaly is enlargement of the liver. Whenever you hear spleno or spleen, spleno is spleen. So splenomegaly is an enlargement of what? The spleen. Like I said, anytime you hear megaly, is what? Enlargement. So splenomegaly, enlargement of the spleen. So hypotension is low blood pressure. That's blood pressure with the systolic blood pressure being less than 140 and the diastolic being less than 90 millimeters mercury. So heart failure, enlarged heart is cardiomegaly. Hypertension, that is somebody who has high blood pressure. Then myocardial infarction, this is heart attack. So these are what people with inborn errors of metabolism encounter. They encounter hepatomegaly, enlargement of the liver. They have incessant jaundice. They have liver failure, growth failure, failure to thrive, weight loss, delayed puberty. Precocious puberty means that you starting puberty before age 9 is precocious puberty. You start puberty too early, and that is a metabolic syndrome. That is an inborn error of metabolism, because you are not supposed to start puberty below age 9. You are supposed to start after age 9. Immunodeficiency, that's if you are immunologically compromised. Your immune system is incompetent. Thrombocytopenia means low platelet concentration. Anemia, enlarged spleen is splenomegaly, enlarged lymph nodes. All these constitute some abnormalities or signs associated with inborn errors of metabolism. So, examples of inborn errors of carbohydrate metabolism are lactose intolerance. That is, we are looking at disaccharide metabolism. Lactose intolerance, sucrose intolerance, monosaccharide metabolism. We have the monosaccharide transport or inborn error of renal tubular transport, renal glucosuria. This often occurs in diabetics. You realize that those with diabetics, when they urinate, let a diabetic go and urinate. After some 5 minutes, go there, you see ants around the urine, or ants eating the urine. It means that there is a lot of sugar in their urine, and it is bad. If it's not controlled, the person can die, because the bacteria and other organisms in the body, they love sugar. So if the sugar is not controlled, it becomes a problem. Monosaccharide catabolism, fructose intolerance, galactose or galactosemia. That's, we see a lot of galactose. If fructose is not broken down, it builds up in the blood, and that is what we call semia, galactosemia. So fructose is made up of glucose and galactose. So if it's not broken down, we get galactosemia. Lactose intolerance, also called lactase deficiency or hypolactasia, is the inability to digest and metabolize lactose, a sugar found in milk. It is caused by a lack of lactase, the enzyme required to break down lactose in the digestive system. And this results in symptoms including abdominal pain, bloating, flatulence. Flatulence means what? Flatulence that you all know. I will not explain flatulence because you all know. Diarrhea, nausea, and acid reflux. Acid reflux is most of the time found in people with peptic ulcer. So you realize that some of the people, they can't take in milk. When you take in milk, you end up getting abdominal pain, bloating, flatulence, diarrhea, nausea. Nausea means a feeling to vomit. Acid reflux means that you feel some burns around your chest because the stomach acid is flowing back into the esophagus. So you realize that it's not easy when you take in milk because the enzyme to break down milk is called lactase. Lactose is called milk sugar. So, and it is broken down by lactase. So if lactase is deficient or is not available in a human being or in somebody, that person is not able to break down lactose to glucose and galactose and the rest. So lactose will remain in the person and it will cause abdominal pain, bloating, flatulence, diarrhea, nausea, and acid reflux. So let's see, this is lactose. It contains glucose and galactose. You see? So lactase is supposed to break it down to galactose and glucose because glucose and galactose, they have a phosphodiester bond here. But it's impossible because the person is lacking the enzyme lactase. So this lactose will accumulate in that person's having this condition. And this one will result in the symptoms of diarrhea, vomiting, and the rest. Glycogen storage. We have glycogenesis is what? The synthesis of what? Glycogen. So if glucose is in the blood, it has to be stored in the liver and in the adipose tissues or fatty tissues. And if there is a problem with glycogen synthase, this is the enzyme that stores glucose in the liver, in the muscle cells, in the form of what? Glycogen. It does its synthesis or catalysis without using high energy ATP. That is why it's called synthase. If it were to be synthetase, then it will require ATP. Glycogenolysis is what the breakdown of glycogen. For instance, if you have been attacked by armed robbers, you need energy to run away. So if the energy in your blood is not enough, then glycogen has to be broken down to glucose by glycosidase or glucosidase, so that the glucose will be used to produce more energy for you. But if glucosidase is lacking, then glycogen will be in your liver, the muscles, and it cannot be broken down. So you end up getting inborn errors of metabolism. Gluconeogenesis is what? Is the metabolic process by which organisms produce sugars or glucose for catabolic reactions from non-carbohydrate sources. Glucose is the only energy source used by the brain, with the exception of ketone bodies during times of fasting. So when you are fasting, because you don't have glucose, the brain will now feed on ketone bodies. And examples of ketone bodies are dihydrogen, is dihydroxy acetone phosphate. One is dihydroxy acetone phosphate. This is one. Number two, we have acetone. These are ketone bodies. Number three, acetoacetate. So this is what the brain feeds on when you are starving or when you are fasting. And in diabetics, when you look inside their blood, these are the three ketone bodies. We call them ketone bodies. Ketone bodies are found in their blood of diabetics because their diabetics are always starving. They have glucose. They can eat right now, but the glucose will not be used up. Their eating is not even necessary because it will not do them any good. They are eating, but they are starving. The food will not be sent to the liver and other tissues and muscles and organs that need it. It will just be flowing. The glucose will be flowing in the blood and come out of the urine. So it will not be utilized. So they end up, the ketone bodies are produced from fatty acids. So fatty acid breakdown will lead to this three ketone body formation. So this is what, when somebody is fasting, the body, because there is no glucose, the brain will feed on ketone bodies. So we have also testis, the erythrocytes or red blood cells, and the kidney medulla feeds on glucose. Precursors for gluconeogenesis are, or what we use to produce glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, are lactate. Lactate. We are going to produce glucose, so we need lactate. We need glycerol. We need amino acids. We also need any other thing like propionate. So we can channel all these four things to produce what? Glucose. That is, we have this, we are fasting, we haven't eaten, so we don't have any glucose or carbohydrate in your body. The body will now use lactate, glycerol, amino acid, even lipid or fatty acids. The body can fall on all these things to produce glucose for us to get energy through the process called gluconeogenesis. Gluco, it means glucose. Neo is new. New synthesis of, or genesis is synthesis. So genesis, gluconeogenesis. Okay, so let's continue. Pentose phosphate pathway. This one uses glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. And if a patient or somebody is suffering from glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, or this enzyme, the person does not have this enzyme, it leads to hemolytic breakdown of red blood cells when the person comes into contact with fava beans, some anti-malaria drugs and the rest. That's why if you are pregnant, they tell you that go and do G6PD test. So this is G6PD, but this one will tackle it when we are doing GC-SPD or pentose phosphate pathway. So for GC-SPD, we can see GC-SPD frequency overlaps with malaria endemic areas. That's use of quinine-based antimalarials will pose a threat will be a threat. Yeah. So this malaria endemic area is yellow without any lines inside. So those who are here have a lot. They are predisposed to what? High percentage of what? GC-SPD deficiency. So when they take in quinine, which is an antimalarial drug, they get hemolytic breakdown of their red blood cells, especially if you are pregnant. Phenylketonuria is what? A deficiency in the enzyme called phenylalanine hydroxylase. And phenylalanine hydroxylase catalyzes the conversion of phenylalanine, which is an amino acid, to tyrosine. So if this enzyme is not available or deficient, then phenylalanine will not be converted towards tyrosine. And tyrosine is used to produce melanin, which is our skin pigmentation, or our hair pigmentation, or our eye pigmentation. That is what gives us the black color or the color of the skin. So if you are lacking melanin, you will get albinism. You will be albino. Urea cycle also, when there is a deficiency in carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1, then urea will not be formed. So let's see. So this is phenylalanine. Phenylalanine hydroxylase will add a hydroxyl group. This is the hydroxyl group. It will add it to phenylalanine to produce tyrosine. So you see phenylalanine is when you add OH to it, it will produce tyrosine. And lack of this tyrosine will lead to albinism because tyrosine is used to produce melanin. Phenylketonuria is an autosomal recessive metabolic genetic disorder which is characterized by a mutation in the gene for the hepatic enzyme phenylalanine hydroxylase, rendering it non-functional. So let's see. Phenylketonuria is an autosomal recessive metabolic genetic disorder. So autosomal means that it is inherited from the what? Autosomes. Whenever we say autosome, autosome is what? Autosome. Autosome is the same as what? Somatic or body cells. Somatic or body cells, also called body cells. The cells, apart from the germ cells, the cells those that comprises of the ovary and the testes, they are called germ cells. Germ cells. Germ cells. And those composed of body cells, the body cells ones, they are called somatic or autosomes. But the germ cells, they lead to what? Sex-linked inheritance. These ones lead to sex-linked inheritance. So the germ cells lead to sex-linked inheritance. That is what you inherit from your parents, that's germ cells. And the autosomes, that's body cells. So autosomal recessive means that if this is a recessive gene, and the capital is dominant gene, So if this one link up with this one also link up with this, and this one come and link up with this, and this one they come and link up with this, we'll have R, 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 small capital R, small r, capital R. So we have for all of them are what? They are carriers. But this one is carrying the disease. But this parent or this parent is normal. So this is homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive, autosomal recessive. So this one is disease, the sick person, the one carrying the abnormal gene. Thank you. This enzyme is necessary to metabolize the amino acids phenylalanine to the amino acid tyrosine, as earlier on described. When phenylalanine hydroxylase is converted into phenylpyruvate, when phenylalanine hydroxylase activity is reduced, phenylalanine accumulates and is converted into phenylpyruvate, also known as phenylketone, which is detected in the urine. So people who don't have phenylalanine hydroxylase will have accumulation of phenylpyruvate, which is also called phenylketone or phenylketonuria, in their urine, or phenylketone in their urine. So let's see, phenylalanine, phenylketone or phenylpyruvate. This enzyme is not available. Phenylalanine hydroxylase is not available. So if it's not available, we can't produce tyrosine. We'll only produce what? Phenylpyruvate or phenylketone, because this one will be converted to phenylpyruvate or phenylketone. And the body does not like it. So accumulation of this product, phenylpyruvate or phenylketone, in the blood or in the body will lead to an impaired head circumference. Meaning that if the head of the baby is supposed to be normal, the head will now become so small. And if your head is small, it means your brain is small. And if your brain is small, you have poor cognitive function, or your mind is small. You don't think. When you study, you will not understand, because you have what? Your cognitive is not developed, your brain is not developed well. You become easily angered, you feel uneasy, uncomfortable, and the person has lighter skin pigmentation because tyrosine is not available to produce melanin. So phenylketonuria can be treated with a special low phenylalanine formula, meaning that when phenylalanine accumulates, it will lead to phenylketone or phenylpyruvate production. So we have to, if that baby will eat, or that person will eat, the person has to eat low phenylalanine diet. Tyrosine is also given at approximately 25 mg per kilogram of weight per day. It's good to give the person tyrosine so that he can produce melanin or the skin pigment and other things, because of that enzyme deficiency, the person is not able to produce what? Tyrosine from phenylalanine, because phenylalanine hydroxylase has been inhibited or is not available. Amino acids are given at about 3 grams per kilogram per day in infancy and 2 grams per kilogram per day in childhood. Infants and children must be monitored regularly during the developmental period. Special considerations for pregnant women with phenylketonuria include constant monitoring of phenylalanine concentrations to prevent intrauterine fetal malformation. So if you don't want the fetus or the baby growing in the mother to have any congenital abnormalities or malformations, abnormal baby, then what you need to do is that you have to be measuring the level of what? Phenylalanine concentrations in the blood and in the urine of the pregnant woman, so that if it is high, you find some drugs that can able to neutralize it, or you reduce the diet so that she doesn't take a lot of diets containing phenylalanine. This is the urea cycle. Go through in your slides. These are symptoms. So let's look at gout. Gout has to do with what? Purine and pyrimidine metabolism. That's the adenine, guanine, cytosine, uracil, and thymine. They are the purine and pyrimidine. When they are not broken down well and when they are not excreted, they accumulate in the joints of the body. There's a joint here. This is the lateral malleolus. or lateral malleolar. That's where we have accumulation of uric acid here. Also, we have this the small this the toenail here. We have this one here. Accumulation of uric acid. Accumulation of uric acid in the phalanges, the middle phalange or the middle finger. All this, the accumulation of uric acid. And this one occurs in people who eat a lot of meat, egg, and protein foods. We call it the sickness or the disease of the rich. Taking a lot of beer with goat meat, dog meat, a whole lot of meat, egg, everything. It will end up this uric acid, which is the breakdown of protein, the end product of protein, or end product of amino acid breakdown, cannot be excreted again because it will overwhelm the body. And if the enzyme, which is called xanthine oxidase, which catalyzes conversion of hypoxanthine to xanthine, if that enzyme is inhibited, then there will be accumulation of uric acid in the joints, and that is what we call gout. So let's go through. Gout is caused by elevated levels of uric acid in the blood, which crystallize and are deposited in joints, tendons, and surrounding tissues, especially at the joints of toes. The medicine or the drug used to treat gout is called allopurinol, and this is the structure. Allopurinol. This is a uric acid structure. So we use allopurinol to treat gout. And this is uric acid structure. So this is the pathway. Hyperuricemia, that's uric acid or abundance of uric acid in the blood. It is caused by disturbed uric acid excretion, elevated uric acid formation, unbalanced nutrition, that is, you are taking food with excess of proteins, meat, egg, beef, a whole lot, containing a lot of uric acid and overwhelming the body. You alone, you are taking one full fowl, one full chicken every day. So it's a disease for the rich. This one also is as a result of impaired recycling of purine bases. Yes, purine or nitrogenous bases. So let's see. Hypoxanthine is converted to xanthine by xanthine oxidase. By xanthine oxidase. This converts hypoxanthine to xanthine. And it also converts xanthine to uric acid. So this drug, if the person has a lot of uric acid built up in the joints, in the fingers and others, in the muscles, what happens is that the drug, when we take in the drug, it will inhibit hypoxanthine. So hypoxanthine cannot be converted to xanthine, and to also inhibit, if there is xanthine, it will inhibit it from producing more uric acid. And this is the drug allopurinol. Let's look at alkaptonuria. Alkaptonuria is an inherited condition that causes urine to turn black when exposed to air. Onchronosis is a buildup of dark pigment in connective tissues such as cartilage and skin, and it's also characteristic of the disorder. This blue-black pigmentation usually appears after 30 years of age. People with alkaptonuria typically develop arthritis, particularly in the spine and large joints. You know arthritis. Arthritis is what? When the body itself attacking its own cells. Then this occurs in the joint. So it leads to what? Rheumatoid arthritis. particularly in spine and large joints, beginning in early adulthood. So we call it's an autoimmune response. The body fighting its own cells. Other features of this condition can include heart problems. So there is also heart problems, kidney stones, that are stones made up of cholesterol and uric acid and the rest building up in the kidney, and prostate stones. Alkaptonuria is caused by a mutation in the gene called HGD gene. The HGD gene provides instruction for making an enzyme called homogentisate oxidase. So this enzyme helps break down the amino acids phenylalanine and tyrosine, which are important building blocks of proteins. Mutations in the HGD gene impair enzymes' role in this process. As a result, phenylalanine and tyrosine are not being broken down. So this leads to what? Homogentic acid, which is produced as a result of what? Inability for phenylalanine and tyrosine to be broken down, leading to accumulation of phenylalanine and tyrosine in the blood. Let's pause here and continue another day.